Would it surprise you to learn that sometimes the best garden mulch is no mulch at all? There's a lot to know about the when, the how, and the why of mulch. So join me today as I discuss how to mulch your vegetable garden. Hi, I'm Gardener Scott, and I'm sitting on my cucumber bed. I actually have cucumber plants growing in this bed now. But surprisingly, for me and maybe for you, I don't have any mulch on the soil yet. Now, mulch is any material that we gardeners intentionally place on top of the soil to get the benefits of mulch. In my garden, I typically use straw, dried grass clippings, and crushed leaves as a mulch. Mulch has great benefits. In my dry region, it really cuts down on the amount of water that I need, because by putting that covering on the surface, it reduces a lot of the evaporation of the water from the soil. It also helps to moderate the soil temperature so that on very hot days, the soil stays relatively cool. But the opposite holds true as well. On very cold days, the mulch holds that cool temperature in the soil and it doesn't warm up as quickly. That's why I don't have mulch on this bed. It's now summer in my garden, but I've had a very unusual spring. Temperatures were well below normal, and I had a lot more rain than I typically do. So my soil has not warmed up. In fact, on the first day of summer, my soil temperature was actually cooler than it was on the first day of spring. To help it warm up to more appropriate summer temperatures, I'm not putting mulch on most of my beds, like this entire row of tomatoes. The plants are exposed to the sun and the soil is exposed to the sun that it'll warm up. Once I can raise the temperature about another 10 degrees Fahrenheit, then I'll start placing mulch on this soil. I'm doing the same thing with these pepper plants, but as you can see, I have some weeds that are beginning to grow between the plants. That's one of the disadvantages when you choose not to use mulch. A good layer of mulch cuts down on weeds, but if you stay up with the weeding, like in this area where I've got a couple zucchini plants growing, it's not that bad. You don't have to have the mulch, and the soil can warm up, and I'll apply the mulch later. I am going to start mulching this cucumber bed. I've been keeping up with the weeding, but there's a lot of weeds that are starting to pop up. So a light mulch in the beginning is a good way to cut down on some of that weed seed germination. And normally this is what I will do. As seedlings emerge from the ground, I begin with a light mulch. In this case, I'm using dried grass clippings. The dried grass clippings will help cut down on the weed growth. It'll also help cut down on my watering requirements, but it's light enough that the soil temperature can still warm up as my days start getting hotter. I'm doing things differently in this cucumber bed. For most of my spring and early summer sowing, I begin with bare soil. Sow the seeds, and then when the seedlings emerge, I put that first layer of mulch down, usually the dried grass clippings. But that's not always necessary. If the seedling that emerges is a strong seedling that can push up through the mulch, then you can go ahead and sow the seeds with the mulch already in place. This bed had a straw mulch in place all winter long. After I amended the bed, I put on the mulch. But I didn't move it aside when I went ahead and sowed these cucumber seeds. And it was no problem at all. They're growing fine, and they've pushed right through the mulch. I had straw on this bed too. I put it here after I filled this metal bed and got the soil all ready to go. And then when I put in these sweet potato slips, All I did was pull aside the mulch when I transplanted. Straw is my mulch of choice for the second stage of mulching. The dried grass clippings are fine in the beginning, but you really need something thicker and stronger to hold up to the sun's rays and to really reduce that evaporation and moderate the soil temperature and cut down on the weeds. And I find straw to do that quite well. This bale is more than a year old. I got it early last year, and that's what I do with my straw. I buy it the year before I use it, just in case it's contaminated by any herbicides. I don't have to worry about it. Because of the rain and the snow and the weather and time, I don't have that issue with these old straw bales. But the straw can have seeds, which can lead to another weed problem. And you may have noticed it in this cucumber bed and in that metal bed. I have little bits of straw plants that are sprouting. So to stay on top of that, I go ahead and pull up the plants, and then I'll just drop them on the surface as additional mulch. I don't have to worry about any contamination. I'm not worried about these young plants spreading more seed. It's just an extra plant that becomes mulch on the surface of the soil. The third type of mulch I like to use is crushed dried leaves. And I have this bag from last autumn. I'll take the leaves and crush them into my bucket. And sometimes I'll do this directly on the garden bed, but I want to go ahead and mix up my special mulch blend. To the crushed leaves, I'm going to add some of my grass clippings. And I'm also going to add some of my straw. And then I'll mix together the leaves and the straw and the grass clippings. I like this mixture of grass and leaves and straw because I've found that it stays together better. In my windy region, grass clippings by themselves will blow away. Leaves by themselves will blow away. And straw will often blow away. But when I mix everything together, it stays in place. It's what I did in my garlic beds. I mulched this garlic bed 9 months ago, and all of the mulch is still in place. There are a couple of other reasons why I like to use this blend. First, it costs almost nothing. The leaves are free and the grass is free. Now I do buy the straw bales, but they're not very expensive. And so for very little cost, I can mulch my entire vegetable garden. I also like to use this blend because all of these ingredients break down very quickly and easily. They will benefit my soil. And so often in the fall when I'm amending my beds, I'll just leave this mulch on top. And then as I add compost and turn that compost and mulch into the soil, I'm enriching the soil life within and benefiting the plants that will grow the following season. And that's why I don't use wood chips in my vegetable garden. I use a lot of wood chips around my fruit trees and my fruit bushes because of all the benefits that mulch will bring to the plants. But these wood chips don't decompose quickly at all. And can't turn them into my soil because all of these wood chunks would be in my vegetable beds, and as they break down, they're robbing the soil of nitrogen that my plants need. So I'm not using wood chips in the vegetable garden. I'm also using wood chips in this part of my garden with my rhubarb and my strawberries, which I consider part of my vegetable garden. But because these are perennial plants and I'm not turning over the soil every year, I use the wood chips, a longer lasting mulch that I won't need to replace. Now, wood chips can have a place in the vegetable garden. There's a type of gardening called Back to Eden that is all about the wood chips. But you have to understand how to garden with a wood chip method like Back to Eden. You have a very thick layer of wood chips, and when you put your seeds and your plants in it, you're not actually putting them into the layer of wood chips. You need to pull aside the wood chips to sow your seeds and to put your plants in, like I did with my sweet potatoes. The mulch gives all of its regular benefits to the entire garden, but the plants themselves are growing in the soil. Because I'm doing regular amending of my soil, because my soil is relatively poor, I'm not doing Back to Eden. I'm doing an annual amending with the compost and with the organic mulch as a way to improve my soil. In some garden beds you may need no mulch, like in this bed with spinach and lettuce and Napa cabbage. The plants themselves are acting as a living mulch and protecting the soil underneath. I'm doing the same thing in other areas of my garden, using this hairy vetch as a living mulch. The vetch is a type of plant that will enrich the soil. I have no vegetables or fruit growing in this bed, so the vetch is helping out the soil, and I can use its biomass in my compost pile or to turn in the soil as an additional amendment. Using mulch doesn't need to be an either-or proposition. It's not no mulch or a lot of mulch. There are phases of the plant's growth that will require a little bit of mulch when the plant is small, and as the plant gets bigger, deeper layers of mulch. So you'll need to reapply it over the period of that growing season. You can also use living mulch and other mulches at the same time. In this bed, I have some hairy vetch already growing. So as the tomatoes get bigger, they'll have a layer of straw and leaves and dried grass clippings along with the living mulch of the hairy vetch to help improve the soil. Proper mulching involves some planning. You've seen how I save my leaves and my grass and my straw from the year before, knowing that I'm going to be using it as a mulch. And I'm monitoring my soil temperature so that I can choose the best time to put the mulch on my soil. You can mulch anytime, and in most cases, having mulch in place is better than no mulch at all. But putting it in at the right time with the right ingredients really can help. And sometimes it happens naturally without even planning it. In this bed last year, I grew cilantro, and I let some of that cilantro grow to seed so that I could save the seeds. Well, some of the seeds that fell have popped up. All the cilantro in this bed are volunteer plants. I'm leaving them in place as a living mulch. I'm also harvesting the cilantro when I use it. But in this case, I planned to mulch the bed, and nature went ahead and took care of it for me. Now, if you want to learn more about mulch, other types of mulch, and other ways to use it in your landscape, watch this video next. I'm Gardener Scott. Enjoy gardening.